Hi, welcome to Core. Yesterday we heard a story about the legend of the Indian paintbrush. Tomorrow we're going to hear another story about a Native American boy. Today I'm going to tell you a story about a bear, a gull, and a crow. Do you know what kind of food this is in this picture? This is a clam. It's a type of shellfish that lives in the ocean. Have you ever eaten a clam before? Let me tell you a story about clams. Long, long ago, there were three animal friends who lived in a land of wild forests, green fields, and shining waters. Gull made her home in the marsh grass near the bay. Bear lived in a cave deep in the woods. And Crow had a nest in an old oak tree at the edge of the garden. Bear, Gull, and Crow often got together to visit and chat. One of the things they talked about was the upright walker beings who lived nearby. What do you think an upright walker would be? An upright walker is a human like you or me. These beings called themselves the Wampanoags, but the animals called them the upright walkers because they walked upright on two legs all the time and never flew. The upright walkers lived in houses they called weedu, built from bent saplings and tree bark. They could make fire just as lightning did when it struck a tree. They grew corn from the kernels planted in the small earth hills. They fished in the bay using nets, spears, hooks, and lines. The upright walkers also hunted in the forest with their bow and arrows, so Bear was always very careful to keep his distance. One day, Gull said to Bear and Crow, "Today I saw some upright walkers wading in the bay. There was a man and a boy. They lifted many smooth rocks from the water and carried them into the forest. They said the rocks were from the Apponaug. I wonder what an Apponaug is." Crow thought for a minute. "An Apponaug must be an animal that eats rocks." "Can there be an animal bigger than I?" said Bear. "I want to see this animal. Tomorrow I will go and spy on the Apponaug." The next day, Bear found the pile of stones. He hid behind the trees and waited. Before long, the upright walkers came. They dug a very shallow hole in the ground. Then they carefully laid the rocks into it and went away. Bear waited and waited, but the Apponaug did not come to eat the rocks. Tired of waiting, Bear went to tell Gull and Crow what had happened. The upright walkers dug a hole and filled it with rocks, but the Apponaug did not come. "Leave it to me," said Crow. "Tomorrow I will figure out what is going on." The next day, Crow perched in a tree near the rock pit. Soon the upright walkers came. They collected lots of dry wood and They collected lots of dry wood and piled it next to the pit. Crow flew hurriedly to Bear and Gull. "The upright walkers collected wood. They're going to build a weedu for the Apponaug," said Crow. "The Apponaug will live in our forest with its own wooden house." He thought for a moment, but what if it's not a friendly Apponaug? Bear and Gull looked worried. The next morning at sunrise, as Gull was winging over the bay, she saw the upright walker man and boy on the beach. There was a girl with them, too. Low tide had uncovered some wet sand that had been underneath at high tide. The upright walkers were looking for little holes in the wet sand. From time to time, water shot up from these holes. They were the breathing holes of the soft-shelled clams that lived under the sand. Gull watched as the upright walkers dug the clams out with long pitchforks. Some clams spit water even after they were dug up. Soon the upright walkers had filled a large basket with the clams. They waded into the shallow water and filled another basket with larger clams. Later on, Gull told Bear excitedly, "The upright walkers collected many clams. They said they were glad to have found so many clams from the Apponaug." Let me read that sentence again. "They said they were glad to have found so many clams for their Apponaug. I hope the Apponaug does not eat up all the clams and fish in the bay." Gull went on. Next, the upright walkers gathered the rockweed that grows on the rocks in the shallow water. The Oppanog is going to eat the rockweed too, said Bear. What will he eat next? Bear looked around. Where is Crow? Wasn't he supposed to meet us here? Do you think the Oppanog eats crows? No sooner had Bear spoken than he saw Crow flying towards them. I saw the upright walkers in the cornfield, exclaimed Crow. They picked baskets full of corn. They said it was for the Oppanog today. The Oppanog is coming today. Bear, Crow, and Gull looked at one another. Let's go, said Bear, and lickety-split, off they set for the rock pit. There they hid amongst the trees. Before long, some upright walkers started to gather. Then more and more came. There were men, women, and children, big and small, old and young. The upright walkers took the dry wood from its pile and laid it over the stones. One man started the wood burning. Others stayed by the fire and kept it going. They raked the burning wood so that the hot ashes fell into the cracks between the rocks. Soon ashes covered the rocks, heating them up. The upright walkers laid rockweed over the ashes. Steam rising from the damp rockweed gave off a sharp smell of salt. The upright walkers placed heaps of clams on top of the rockweed, together with lobsters, corn, and potatoes. When all the food was loaded on, they covered it more with rockweed. Bear, Crow, and Gull sniffed the mouth-watering aromas of the food cooking. Now everyone fell silent as a very old upright walker stepped forward and said a prayer to the Great Spirit. He thanked the Great Spirit for the animals, plants, rocks, and trees. The other upright walkers joined hands in a circle and stood in silence. Then, as the flute and the drum sounded, the upright walkers began to dance. When the dancing had ended, the old upright walker spoke again. This is a fine day for our Oppanog. The Oppanog is a celebration, a time for our people to come together to give thanks to the Great Spirit and to feast on delicious food. So let the feasting begin. The rockweed covering was lifted off, and the upright walkers began to load their bowls with food. Bear, Gull, and Crow looked at one another. An Oppanog was not a huge rock-eating animal with big teeth. An Oppanog was a celebration where the upright walkers had a clam bake feast, a mouth-watering, nose-tickling feast. How they wished they could leap out from their hiding place and join in. But what would the upright walkers think of having uninvited guests? Just then, a girl walked toward their hiding place carrying a bowl piled high with food. It was the girl that Gull had seen digging in the sand for clams. The girl laid the bowl on the ground. Before running back to the other upright walkers, she called, "To the birds and the animals who share the forest and the bay with us Wampanogs, may you enjoy our Oppanog, our clam bake feast." And that is just what Bear, Gull, and Crow did. This is a story about a celebration or a tradition. Tradition means something that you do that really is important to you and means a lot to you. It's really important that these Native Americans have a feast to celebrate all that they have, including the food that they have to eat and the land that they have to live in and the animals that are there that they also that are also using the land and the food. So it's just a tradition, an Oppanog. They thought that the animals thought that it was going to be another great big animal, but an Oppanog is just a big word for Native Americans when they want to have a feast or a celebration. Have you ever had a celebration before? Something fun that's maybe a tradition that you like to do a lot with your family? That's what these Native Americans did. And also, they don't have stores. They can't go to Target or Walmart and get things for their celebration. They have to get it from the land, right? They had to go pick the corn. They had to collect the clams. They had to use their brains to figure out a way that they could celebrate all the land that they were living on. All right, thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.